It certainly has not been the start for Jurgen Klopp and the Liverpool side this season. So far, they've managed just 2 wins in the first 6 games of the Premier League season. And the recent Liverpool managers who have started the Premier League season with 2 wins or fewer, other than Jurgen Klopp, has been, as you can see, Brendan Rodgers and Roy Hodgson all the way back in the 2010-2011 season. So we've spoken a lot about the fact that Liverpool have had a lot of injuries, particularly in that midfield area. We've spoken about how individually as well, a lot of these players are not on form and confidence have affected them. But what's not been mentioned about perhaps is the fact that this is Jurgen Klopp's 7th year in Liverpool. And we all know what happened at Dortmund. Do you think that the message is not really getting across to the players?
When you have had a manager for a long, long time, or a manager's been in charge of a group of players a long, long time, unless there's a big turnover of players, that can be sometimes. It can be, the voice can be drained out, even the reactions, the raising of the voice can be drained out because you're just hearing the same thing all the time. So he needs to almost sometimes reinvent himself a little bit, change the tone, change his tact a little bit, but also personnel. I think they've got the balance okay with terms of, I mean, maybe they probably could have done with 1 or 2 more midfield players. And Naby Keita, for example, Thiago, since he's been there, they've been constantly having injuries. So it's not like it's anything new, right? So you would think they would have brought someone in sooner.
Yeah, and another way of freshening it up, of course, is with your backroom staff as well, isn't it? Which, you know, Jurgen Klopp hasn't always had the same assistant since he's been at the club. So that's a consideration. But I don't really see too many problems at Liverpool Football Club. You know, they've not been out of the top 3 for the last 4 seasons, and I think that will continue. You know, let's judge Liverpool come the end of the season, not now.
So would you consider this? We all know it's a bit of a transition period for Liverpool, so you will need a bit of time. Would you still see them as title contenders then, Philip?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think when everybody's fit, there are a lot of players in the team. They exactly know what's needed, and that they have the quality inside. They have a coach. Of course, it's a long time, maybe 7 years, but they know exactly how they want to play. So I've no doubt they will be. It's not a good start, but for me, they're still one of the favourites.
Is that really that big of a factor, the length of a manager?
It's like Mark says. It depends a bit. If the group stays exactly the same, it becomes more difficult. You have to change your package, your messaging to the players, because if they hear every day the same. But if every season you will have a few new players and a few leave, I don't see any problem in being at a team for a long period of time.
How did you used to do it then, when you had that lengthy spell?
At PSV is to make sure that every year a few players leave, and I try to keep the core of the team more or less intact, and a few changes.
Do you change your own message, the way you set it up? Yes,
sometimes you different approach to the players, different way of setting up meetings. It's sometimes more about motivation, because they know all what they have to do if you work a long time together with the same core within your team. And I think Jurgen Klopp is such a great manager that no doubt he's capable of doing it.
And did you think that the sort of late loan signing of Arthur Melo, Mark, was a little bit, maybe strange wouldn't be the word. He is a like for Thiago, so clearly he's there as a replacement for Thiago when Thiago's injured. But he's almost so like for like, the fact that his injury record is pretty much the same as Thiago as well. If you're bringing in somebody to depend on when Thiago's out, bringing somebody who's so injury prone doesn't seem like the best of plans.
No, it's just a little bit of maybe a little bit late in the transfer window, thinking, right, okay, Jordan Henderson's now injured, Keita, Thiago. You know, Henderson's probably out for a while. They're not quite sure, but it could be for a while. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what is there available? Who's left at a decent amount of money? Because Liverpool are very much structured in their process of bringing players in. They don't want to panic in anything. I'm sure they've got like an emergency fund, like obviously they've probably used now, but he's got a loan, so it's not going to, you know, eat up into that too much. So I think it's more about circumstances rather than long-term planning.
Yeah, and if you look at the recruitment of Liverpool Football Club in recent seasons, since Klopp has been there, generally speaking, they've got it right.
Aside from that sort of late signing of Ozan Kabak and Ben Davies, that one didn't turn out too well.
There's always going to be the one or two. Like I think every
but
manager.
there was just a lot of similarities to that sort of reactionary.
If you look at Arsene Wenger when he's at Arsenal, there's a lot of players that also didn't quite make the grade that he signed. But then there's also a lot of players that did it incredibly
You never
well.
get 100%.
No,
it's
of course
impossible.
not.
No, a lot of factors play part in if a player will succeed at your club or not. Just a part of him as a player, his qualities. But I agree, most of the time, I think Liverpool hit it on the spot.
I think he's done some amazing signings. I mean, absolutely incredible signings of players. And I mean, even though like Mane, they didn't get a lot of money for him when he sold him, but what they got out of him as a player, as a person, contribution was absolutely unbelievable. And I don't think there's many people that thought that Mane would go on to do what he did when he was at Southampton. Yeah.
And I think Diaz was a target to come in this summer, but they had to move earlier, and they brought him in January, didn't they? And you know, look at his contribution, having come in January as he did. No, I think Liverpool's recruitment has been pretty much spot on.
There's a clear structure and plan in place, right? So you could compare other clubs that. Certainly big clubs that there doesn't seem to be any plan in place at all, and it's literally willy-nilly of buying players. Liverpool have a very good structure in place, and it's proven with the players they've brought in.
Well, speaking of players brought in, if you look at the amount spent of the English Premier League clubs versus every other top-flight clubs, every other top-flight league in Europe, there is a major difference, and I'm talking about a really significant difference between how much the English Premier League clubs have spent versus the likes of La Liga, Serie A, Liga, Bundesliga. Is that dangerous for the game?
If it were to happen year after year, yes. But the biggest difference for me is that the TV rights deals between the Premier League and all the rest is so much greater with the Premier League. So therefore, it is a sustainable or viable for a certain period of time. They don't do it every year, do they? I mean, this is the first time they've spent as much money as they have. And there'll be clubs, obviously there's financial fair play coming into it. So that's over a 3-year period. So there's going to be a tapering off of it. There's no way in the world it can continue.
Should there be some kind of regulation to ensure that there is some kind of sustainability?
Well, there already is.
Not just for Premier League clubs, but also because this might even affect further down the ladder in English football.
Well, there already are. So in the various leagues, there are also financial. I mean, Philippe knows it better in the Championship, for example.
No, they are. Of course, stricter and stricter they're getting, setting the rules and regulations. Now? Probably even more in the Championship, because the amount of money that comes in the Premier League is so much higher than in any other league. But there are some rules in place, and also in other countries. I know in Germany or in Holland, they're monitoring clubs, what they spend, how much money comes in, what can go out. So, yeah, I think, like Mark says, with those amounts of money coming in, you can do it for a certain amount of time, but you have to be careful.
It just seems like that spend and that gap just keeps going bigger and bigger between the English Premier League and.
Well, yeah, because the TV rights is so much different. Like, I mean, there's not another league.
You're just a bit worried about the consequences of it eventually in the long term.
Yeah, but that's again about control, about the club's professionalism, how they approach it. So if it's ongoing year after year, of course there's going to be a problem. But I think the fact that the TV rights for the Premier League are so much greater than anywhere else on the planet, the amounts of money, the difference is understandable because of that, the revenue they generate.
And the truth is that when a Premier League club approaches an Ajax, for example, for a player, compared to what they would get quoted if they were a team from the Bundesliga. You know, the other leagues know that all the money sits in the Premier League. So there's a premium added on to start with, which just, you know, makes the extremes even greater.
Yeah, and it will be more difficult to sell players because less clubs can pay the amount of money in wages that they play in the Premier League. So...
There's probably also, you'll see the bigger clubs in the country, like you saw Man City with Raheem Sterling going from Man City to Chelsea. It's because also the ability for clubs in the Premier League still to pay that sort of money, whereas previously...
Yeah, you wouldn't sell a top player to a rival, would you?
Top team, you just wouldn't do it.
But wouldn't that mean the whole economy, the circulation is just going to be within the Premier League? So again, if this is not having stricter regulations.
Yeah, it kind of is to a degree, but then you know, like we were saying, the money also, the transfer fees that are paid abroad by English clubs are exorbitant because it's the English clubs and they know they've got money and they're prepared to buy players and they want them, so they'll go and spend that little bit extra money. They know there's a premium.
So over in Netherlands then, Philip, what does the people in the Dutch league actually think of the Premier League dominating and having all this money to spend?
Yeah, they know it's a factor because in Holland it's a small league and in Holland we have to be creative by educating young players, giving them opportunities, having a good scouting. So if you go abroad, we try to bring in players from a certain age so that after 3, 4, 5 years you can sell them, like Ajax did last season, and now they sell the players. Because you know, if
mostly to Manchester United.
Yeah, if Man United knocks on your door for your centre back or your winger, yeah, you know, but big money will come in.
With Ajax, it happens year after year. I mean, their system is incredible. I mean, the way they do it in Germany, they've started to do it as well because they can't compete in the normal ways because they just don't have the finance backing. So they've really invested in the youth structure, finding that next talented player, bringing players from underdeveloped leagues and bringing them through. I mean, you look at RB Leipzig, for example, and that whole formula, that whole system, it's quite remarkable, the type of players that they brought in and the money they've sold them for.
Yeah. And the other way of doing it to some extent is that, you know, you almost shop at the Manchester City academy. You know, they've got so many talented young players, but they're not all going to come through into the Man City team. So, you know, there are clubs now that look to acquire young players from Manchester City. I think Southampton have taken about 3 players this transfer window, young players from Manchester City, for example. You know, there's different ways of running your business model. Yeah. But the truth is, Michelle, you're exactly right. The money that is floating around in the English Premier League at times, I don't think is particularly healthy.
Thanks, gents. I think those are really, really interesting thoughts as well. If you want to check out more exclusive content, it's, of course, here on our Stadium Astro YouTube page and a lot more on our social media as well. Make sure you follow us there. That's Stadium Astro.